Have you ever gone camping and felt completely alone in the woods, like the world had stopped at the edge of the trees? No cars, no voices, just the wind blowing through the trees. At first, the quiet feels peaceful, safe, until you hear something. A sound so small you almost convince yourself it didn't happen. Something shifting, something close. Because sometimes being alone doesn't mean you're safe. Sometimes it means there's no one around to notice when something goes wrong. This is a story about a weekend my wife and I spent camping alone in the wilderness. And the moment we realized someone else had been there the entire time. This is the campsite. I remember the drive out there like it was yesterday. The sun was dipping behind the ridges, casting long shadows across the narrow dirt road. We arrived at our campsite just as the sun began to set. Perfect spot. No other cars, no other campers, just us. We got to work setting up camp, pitching the tent, unloading our gear, and getting a small fire going before the light faded. The smell of burning pine settled into the air, familiar and comforting. It made the clearing feel lived in, like it belonged to us now. That first night was calm, the kind of quiet you expect when you're deep in the woods. When we finally crawled into the tent, I felt tired in a good way, the kind that comes from fresh air and a full day outside. Morning came with sunlight spilling through the trees, thin beams cutting through a low blanket of mist that clung to the forest floor. The air smelled damp and fresh, like wet earth and pine needles. After breakfast, we decided to take a short day hike. Nothing ambitious, just a quiet trail that looped through the woods and back toward camp. The trail was empty, no voices, no footsteps, just us and the steady crunch of dirt beneath our boots. About half a mile in, we finally saw someone else. A man stumbled onto the trail. His clothes were worn thin and streaked with dried mud, like they hadn't been washed in a while. It wasn't alarming, just unexpected. He didn't look injured. He didn't seem lost. He just looked like someone who had been out there longer than most people usually are. When he noticed us, he slowed slightly. Then, without a word, he stepped off the trail and disappeared between the trees. Jenna leaned in and whispered, "Do you think he's okay?" I shrugged, trying to sound casual. Probably just someone doing a longer trek. Guess not everyone cares how they look out here. We kept walking, and the trail stayed empty after that. No other hikers, no voices drifting through the trees, just us. We got back to camp as the light faded. We ate dinner by the fire and eventually crawled into the tent. I was just starting to drift when I heard it. A soft scrape along the ground. Slow, controlled. Close enough that I felt it more than heard it. I held my breath, listening. There was a faint rustle near where we'd left our packs. Something brushing against fabric. Then a muted clink. Metal touching metal, followed by stillness. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Jenna shifted beside me but didn't sit up. "Hear what?" I listened again. Nothing. Just the distant chirp of insects and the wind threading through the trees. "Probably nothing," I said. Morning came softly. No sense of alarm. Just pale light filtering through the trees and the low hum of the forest waking up around us. For a moment, lying there in the tent, everything felt fine. We started going through our usual morning routine, pulling out the stove, grabbing our packs, when something small caught my attention. One of the backpacks was open, and realized the water bottle I kept clipped to the side was gone. I stood there for a second, confused. I hadn't taken it on the hike. "Did you move my pack?" I asked. Jenna shook her head. "No." "Why?" I didn't answer right away. I was looking around the campsite now, scanning it with fresh eyes. The chair was what finally did it. The folding chair we'd left by the fire the night before was no longer facing the flames. It had been turned, just slightly, but enough that it now pointed directly at the tent. We moved around the campsite quietly, double-checking our gear. Nothing else seemed missing. Nothing looked damaged. But the feeling had changed. Whatever we'd heard the night before hadn't been the forest. It had been someone moving through our camp, and realizing that in the daylight, after the fact, was somehow worse. We spent the rest of that day trying to act like nothing had happened. We packed up the opened bags and moved the chair back toward the fire. In the daylight, everything felt easier to rationalize. Still, neither of us strayed far from the campsite. By the time the sun dipped behind the tree line again, the forest felt different than it had the night before. Hours passed. Darkness pressed in. Just as I started to fall asleep, I heard it again. A soft scrape against the dirt outside the tent. I froze. It came from near the spot where we'd left the chair. Something shifted slowly, deliberately. Then came a faint metallic sound. The unmistakable sound of a zipper being moved. "Jenna," I whispered. "Someone's out there." Her hand found mine. "We have to see who it is." My hands shook as I reached for the zipper. Slowly, carefully, we opened the tent. My pulse thundered in my ears. And then, the chair jerked violently. A figure leapt out of it, boots hitting the dirt hard, and sprinted into the trees. Branches snapped, leaves exploded underfoot. Then nothing. I stood frozen, breath caught in my chest. It was him. The man from the trail. The same dirty, wild-looking hiker we'd passed the day before. We didn't hesitate after that. Adrenaline took over. I don't remember running so much as stumbling toward the car, breath tearing out of my chest. We drove straight to the nearest ranger station as soon as we could. The ranger listened quietly as we told our story. Then he nodded gravely. "You weren't imagining it," he said. "There's a vagrant living in these woods. He's been terrorizing campers for months, stealing things, watching tents, making people feel unsafe. He hasn't hurt anyone yet, but he's patient, and he knows these woods well." I felt a chill run through me. The man on the trail, the sounds outside the tent, the rotated chair, rifled backpacks, the missing water bottle. It all clicked. We had stumbled into someone else's territory, and he had been watching us the whole time. I still go camping sometimes. I still seek the quiet of the forest. But I never assume an empty campsite is actually empty, because sometimes someone else is already there.